Hello and welcome. It is the 22nd annual Garden State Film Festival. There will be 200 films from over 14 countries, all happening March 21st to the 24th of this year. I am your host, Emily DeSimone, and I am here with director Keith Armenitis of the short film The Legend. Keith, thank you so much for joining me, and please tell our live audience all about your film.
Oh, sure, and thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. So, The Legend is actually a short horror film that was originally supposed to be part of an anthology that I had been working on with a group of other writers. As of right now, I think it's actually going to be a standalone piece, which is, I don't know, pretty exciting, I think. It's based upon a young woman who's been asked to rescue an endangered animal from a barn. And when she gets there, she finds out it's something a little bit more than she bargained for.
So, please tell me, how did you find your cast and crew for this film?
Well, the we actually had to pull the film together pretty quickly. So I went to an actor that I've worked with before, Sean Kane. He'd actually been in one of my other films a few years back. Fantastic actor. I asked him to join on because I knew that I could throw just about anything at him, and he'd bring it, and he certainly did for this film. And then the young woman who is in the film is Booch O'Connell. Booch is actually somebody I met at Garden State Film Festival years ago, and she was a young actress then. She's still a young actress now, but I've wanted to work with her for a few years, and when I was reading the script, I decided to kind of cast against type. Originally the script was supposed to be this badass woman coming to perform this rescue, and I thought, well, what would it be like if somebody who was completely ill-equipped but didn't realize it was on this mission of mercy? And I think it actually works better that way.
So, what inspired you to write this film, come up with this idea, and is horror your vein of work?
Yeah, so, well, I actually didn't write this film. This one I just directed. It was actually written by Dino Barlam, who was in the writing group that I was in. As I stated, it was supposed to be part of an anthology, and it was really supposed to be a way to help kind of kick off the anthology, so the rest of the anthology could kind of roll after that. It was also everything in the anthology was supposed to be based on mythology from New Jersey, and this particular film was no different. When I originally read the script, it was probably about 8 pages longer than what we shot. And when I talked to the writer, I'm like, this really isn't this long-winded kind of diatribe going into this thing. I said, this is a heist film. This is somebody trying to break in and rescue someone, and all the other stuff is superfluous. And kind of when I gave that note, it clicked with Dino, and Dino did the rewrite. And as soon as I saw the rewrite, I saw everything in my head, and I'm like, you know what, this is something I could shoot right away. So unlike my other films that I either wrote and directed, this is the first one where I'm directing somebody else's work.
So, with this being the first work that you have been written, what was it like process wise? What is it like working on a film, directing a film that you didn't come up with the idea?
Well, I mean, I'm a writer as well, so I kind of put myself in the writer's shoes, and just kind of thought about, how would I feel if somebody had asked me to make changes, etc. So, uh, throughout the process, I was very respectful of their creative energies, and you know, kind of like this idea that it's like, hey, your baby is kind of cute, but look better if you did this. And so there's a bit of ego that gets involved in a lot of the stuff that we do, especially in the creative side. And so the big piece of it, and what I like to do, is actually have people on set that I kind of tell everyone, check the ego at the door, because we're all here together to make a film. And Dino was fine with that, which was great. So there was a collaborative process in pre-production. We spent about a week doing some rewrites on the script, and then when we saw things that needed adjustments during the shooting, I actually talked to him about them, and then we processed that. Of course, when you get to the point where you're editing at the end, sometimes editing, you drop stuff that you would have loved to have kept, but in order to keep the story, I mean, everything is beholden to the story. In order to keep the story proper, you sometimes have to lose stuff, only because tension gets lost or messaging gets lost. And you know when you get to the final film, sometimes the things that looked great on the page don't look great on the screen, so you have to make some adjustments.
And so, horror, is this typically what you find yourself doing or working with? Is something of like the horror genre, or is
No,
this a new
no.
vein for you?
Actually, I'm not a big horror movie fan. I know everybody who's seeing this is going to be like, "Well, we're not going to come see that then." But the reason why is I don't like to be scared. I'll
Mhm.
be honest. I don't go out of my way to like have nightmares. I got enough of them on my own. I don't need somebody to feed that. But I'm actually writing a horror film right now. That'll be a feature film, and I didn't even want to do that. And then a good friend of mine, a director I've worked with quite a bit, uh, you know, he said to me, he goes, Keith, horror is really just drama with a supernatural element to it. And as soon as he said that, I realized that everything that I kind of put up as roadblocks in my mind as to doing horror kind of fades away. And so with this film, I did the same thing as well, which is I looked at what are the parts of it that are really dramatic, what are the things that are standard fare, and then when the monster comes and becomes involved, that's where the horror is. Um, I actually look at things, I think, a little bit differently. I don't think that horror uh, necessarily has to do with just something supernatural. I really think that the way people treat each other sometimes is pretty horrific. And looking at that piece of it, looking at the sacrifice of our humanity, or the people ignoring it, or having to do things that are against their own humanity, are really the horrific parts of that, of living. And if you could capture that properly on screen, then you have a good horror film.
So, with this being, I guess, one of your first, if not horror works, what is something that you found to be a big challenge for you, and what was your favorite part of the process?
Well, the challenge is, of course, how can you find the story when when you read something on a piece of paper. You could do anything. And that's one of the things as a writer I love that. If you want to have like, and suddenly descending from the sky or 1,000 UFOs and they land around blah blah blah. That's easy to write. That's cheap. Words are cheap. But when you actually have to shoot it, that's when real money gets involved. And so sometimes you have to look at what is the most economical way of getting something across,
Mhm.
without having to go out and scrounge a lot of money in order to do it. So the challenge is always to capture what was in the mind and the writing of the screenwriter, uh, and do the script and the story justice with what you have available. So that's always a challenge. Putting stuff together is a challenge, especially as an independent filmmaker. Any independent filmmaker that's watching this now or will be at Garden State Film Festival, you ask them, what was the toughest part of it, and they're going to go the money, which is a shame, because there's so many great filmmakers, and we don't have billionaire benefactors just throwing wads of cash at us. Though if there's any billionaire benefactors out there that wants to throw wads of cash at any of us, I'd like to be first in line. So hit me with the bundles of 50s. I don't care. My favorite part is always the collaborative nature of filmmaking, and that goes through every single part of the process. Pre-production, I worked very closely with my director of photography, Carlos Jimenez. I've actually worked with him on a few other things, and Carlos is just chock full of great ideas. And it's always fantastic to go around and do location scouting with him, because it fuels his ideas, which fuel mine, and then we all get giddy, and then reality steps in. Like, you can't drive a car through a bird sanctuary in order to get the shot you want. So uh, the actual story of what happened for this film. But then when you're on set, I, as an independent filmmaker, again, I don't have a ton of money, so the only thing that I have is my appreciation for the people that come on set and help us. It's long hours, long days, not a lot of money. We make sure everybody gets paid, but there's there it's definitely not something that you're going to get if you're a union person, in the guild. um, so the only thing I can do is give people my appreciation and love, and thankfully I usually get that back. And then of course post production is, yeah. So yeah, I know this is so bad, but it's a bad answer. No, because literally I love every step of the process. But in post production, when you actually get to like pull out the story and actually see it come to life, and
Mhm.
when like Foka Barson, who did our edit, there's this one part that is such a key element at the end of the film, that you really, if because again, we didn't have a ton of money, so we couldn't create a monster, a believable one. Didn't have the money for it, so we had to represent it mainly through camera angles and through movement and sound and everything else. Um, and when I saw the footage that I had, I'm like, oh God, I screwed it all up. It's terrible. And then Foka with his magic fingers, came back with this edit, and I looked at it. I'm like, I believe that, and I was there, so I know what that is. I know what that was, and it looks real. So it's kind of like seeing the magic suddenly, appear. It's like, wow, this is why we do it. So yeah. So my answer is I loved every part of the process. But I know that's why I'm saying it's a terrible answer, but it's
No,
true.
no.
Yeah, because you go back to your mundane life, whatever I do day to day in order to pay the bills, and it's like you don't get that sense of collaboration. People aren't helpful. They really, a lot of people are just kind of cruising through life, and don't bother me. I'm just heading to Friday. That's all I want. But when you make movies, man, when you make movies, everybody is just actualized. They're the best versions of themselves, and they just, it's just all this great energy that pours out. So hopefully, that translates into the audience responses as well.
I absolutely think it will, especially after, giving us that insight here today. And you know what, you guys, you can check out The Legend at Asbury Lanes on Saturday, March 23rd during the 11:45 a.m. to 2 p.m. block. Keith, I hope to see you at the Garden State Film Festival this year, where there are 200 films screening across 8 venues, including hosting parties, panels, events, and more. Guys, get your tickets at gsff.org/tickets. I'm your host, Emily DeSimone. And Keith, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you have a great rest of your Sunday.
Thanks,
Bye, guys.
Emily. You too. Bye bye.